Hey everybody, this is Brad from Johnson Small Engines, better known as the one-handed mechanic. If I can do it, you can too. Today we have here it's a John Deere LX 255, but we're working on a Kohler Command. It's a 15 CV. You guys are looking for parts for your engine. You want to go to your model number and spec number. This is a CV15S. And the spec number is a 41571. You're going to take that number. You're going to go to a Kohler parts lookup website and you'll be able to find all the parts that you need. Even though this is a John Deere, you can find all the parts you need at the Kohler website. Okay, so this one here does not start. It cranks, but it will not start. Okay, so what I would recommend, now this is going to be on how to basically diagnose a ignition issue, but you also want to make sure that, first of all, it has compression, which means you can just, if you turn over the engine by hand, and this can get really hard, this is the Kohler Command engines were great motors. You're going to come across a compression stroke, which I'm coming across right now, and it's really hard. Then it gets really easy, and then it'll come back to the compression stroke, and it'll get really hard. Now you definitely know 100% we got good compression by just checking that. If it keeps spinning, you probably blew up the motor. That's not good. Then you want to check your oil, obviously, and this oil here is perfect, so make sure you check your oil, make sure it was there. If your oil is really low on a dipstick, you could also have blown up the motor, but that would go back to this, having no compression. Then you're going to go ahead and check spark. When you check spark, you're going to use a inline spark tester, something like this, and you can purchase this. I'll put in a link in the description below, or you can go to your local automotive store, probably has it. I'm also going to use my clip tool to pull out this is the ignition wire right here. This is where the spark plug goes. You want to make sure that you do not pull the metal part off the spark plug wire. You're going to pop it off using the tool. There's a metal piece inside here that actually will get stuck on the spark plug sometimes, and when you pull the wire, you can actually pull the metal piece off the spark plug, and then you're in trouble. I'm going to go ahead and put the spark plug tester. You have to put it on the part of the spark plug. And then you're going to put the other end into the spark plug boot, like so. And then just going to lay this off to the side, and you're going to look to see if we have spark. I'm going to go ahead and crank it up. There is absolutely no spark. Next step you want to do, because it has no spark here, you could have a bad spark plug. So we're going to pull the tester off. We're going to remove the spark plug. Oh, that was tight. So go ahead and put a new spark plug in. Okay, I'm going to just use one of my NGKs that I like. The one that was in there was a Champion. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use a spark plug installer. Basically, it's just a piece of rubber. You can use a piece of fuel line, and it really makes it a lot easier to install the spark plug, because the Kohler Commands have a very long way to go before you get to the spark plug hole, and you don't want to cross thread it. So by using a piece of rubber fuel line or the tool, it makes it very easy to install. Always try the simple stuff first, like a new spark plug. Go ahead and put your spark tester back on. And we'll give it another shot. Okay, we have no spark. Now we have to remove the ground wire that's on the coil so we can make the coil separate from the entire electrical system. So when you take the ground wire off of the coil, that would mean that the coil should spark no matter what. There is nothing else in the electrical line that could actually ground this coil out. Sometimes there's electrical problems in the machine where it grounds the coil, so we have to get underneath here, we have to take that wire off, then we have to check spark again. So we're going to take off these bolts here, we're going to take off this housing. 8mm socket, we'll take off these. We have to take off this grill here because it has a lip on it and when you put it back on again, you have to make sure that this is exactly the same lip all the way around, or it'll rub against your housing here. And these are 8mm socket right there. You may have to use an 8mm wrench to get in there. Okay, now also, just so you know, they're just right here and they're threaded, and it goes over the outside of this, and then this is slotted on the side here. So you see the slots here, so you can move it up and down to get that gap that you need here. Not exactly sure what that gap size is, but just make sure that it's up high enough that it doesn't rub on the housing, and then it has to be low enough that the other housing on top doesn't rub too. So it's a little bit involved, but not too bad. Now we have to take off 6 more of these. And some of these are different sizes. Just have to make sure they go back where they came from. Now this one here, as you can see, is a very long one. Normally that one goes over here somewhere, but this one here should be a long one too. We have that one in the front, we have this one on the side. This guy here is going to be a little bit shorter than that one. We got one here on the dipstick. This is the long one that I usually... All right, so that one actually, it looks like these might be a little bit wrong because the longer one should go on a dipstick. So this long one, I'm going to put back in here. So just keep that in mind. Try to get them where they belong. Now also, this is the voltage regulator here, and we need to take that off. But before I take that off, I'm actually going to disconnect the battery because I don't want to take any chances on having anything arc. Negative first. This one here. Okay, now there's a grommet right here that gets stuck to the housing usually. So when you pick it up, you're going to have to push this out of the housing, and it sometimes can be really stuck. Just going to go ahead and try to tap this out like that. And I did have this wire loom that was connected to here. Now this comes off. This is where you find a whole bunch of, if you had any mice problems, this can get eaten up. This is your coil here. This is your ground wire. When we disconnect this ground wire, it's going to disconnect the entire electrical system from this coil. So right now, this coil should fire. If this coil does not fire, then we either have a bad coil, or sometimes you can have bad magnets on a flywheel, which is hardly ever happens. And also there's an air gap between this is your magnets right here that come across your coil, and this gap here is supposed to be between 7 and 11 thousandths. And usually if it's not rubbing and it's not real far away, it's going to be really close and it's going to fire. But if it ran before this, then obviously that wasn't a problem. We're going to have to put the housing back on because we do need to connect the voltage regulator. You most likely do not have to put the housing back on. You can just crank it over to see if the coil has spark. But I've had issues with voltage regulators failing, and I'm just weird about that. So I have to put this all back together again just in my head to make sure that this voltage regulator will not fail. Put this back on. Now, since that ground wire is off, either we're going to get spark or it's going to be a bad coil. Okay, so that proves that we have a bad coil. Let's go ahead and install a new coil. I like to use OEM parts, and for this particular engine, like I said, everybody asks me for part numbers, and that's the part number for this particular engine. Okay, so like I said before, use your model number and spec number to look up the parts that you need for your machine. Don't just believe that this coil goes to this engine, because there are different coils for different engines. The only thing that's going to be a little tricky is getting this guy right here. These get to be so old they almost break. And if you have one that breaks, I mean, you can get away with not using these, but they're there for vibration protection. Ah, there it is. If your other one's really old and cracked, you might be able to order one of these. I'm not sure if you can still get these or not. We're going to take this off. Again, this is an 8mm socket. The nice new OEM one comes with the spark plug boot, which is nice. Make sure that your ground wire connector is on top. And these are slotted, believe it or not. They're slotted right here, so you can move the coil in and out. So what I do is, because we have to get the armature air gap, so what I do is I lock these in with the coil all the way out. It'll go in and out just a little bit, slide it all the way out, and then tighten it up. Make sure your magnet is out of the way when you're doing this, because your magnet's going to want to attract to this. You want to make sure this is tight all the way back out. Pull your magnet around. I try to line it up between both, because what I'm going to use now, you can use a feeler gauge in here, a feeler gauge, or something that is between 7 and 11 thousandths. And I use a piece of plastic. Been using this for years. Slide it in here. Make sure your magnet is going to pull both of these together when you loosen them. Loosen it up. Make sure it's in. Tighten back down. Okay. We're tight. We're gonna turn this as we pull this out, like that. And then you just want to make sure you go back and forth and check your air gaps. Make sure they're... All right, so this one is a little tight. And that one actually, I'm going to do this one more time. I wasn't happy with that air gap there. All right. Okay. Much better. Okay, we're good. Put the ground wire back on. If you have any chewed up wires in here, this is the time to fix them. So I'm going to put this on. Now this is a little bit tricky because you have to line everything up. Just push that grommet up in there. Make sure that everything goes back the way it was. I'm going to go ahead and start some of these bolts. Some of the bolts, especially with the housing right here where there's like 3 different housings that connect to the one hole, you kind of have to make sure they're all lined up just right. So I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to use the supersized long one that we get out front. I'm going to put it over here because that's where it's supposed to be. And then the one that wasn't quite as long, I'll put up front. And then you have the short ones. I'll start on this side. One goes here. And don't tighten any of them until you get them all seated and all started. Put my last one in here. This one's not lining up real well. See how it's not lining up very well right there? So you just don't tighten any of them until you get them all in, because you have to manipulate the housing a little bit to get them to all go in. I'm going to tighten up this one, put the battery on, just so we can test it before we go any further. Go ahead and put our inline spark tester on. Not sure if you guys will be able to see that, but we have a bright spark now. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this all back together again and see if this guy will fire up. Just to give you a little background on this engine, this tractor was given to the gentleman when he bought the house, so I don't have any idea when the last time this thing ran. Be careful not to over tighten these. I'm going to go ahead and tighten the battery up. Okay, so this can be a little bit tricky. And like I said, you have to get it, line up your holes, your mounting holes with the slots, because this is tight going down. And they have to, I try to just get them to line up. Now, that's all the way down right there. I want to get the bolt started. Now this, you have to have an air gap here. Okay, so I'm using 2 layers of the box that the coil came in. I don't know exactly the thickness, but you have to have an air gap there so it doesn't hit your housing here. I would say that if you put the housing up to the top ridge, like where this ridge is, if you kind of even that out, it should be pretty close to being perfect. And then just check, make sure before you tighten this up, make sure you just check around, make sure nothing's rubbing. This one here feels like it's a little bit on the, I'm gonna tip it up a little bit. All right, yeah, I like that. All right, so if you buy the coil in the box, you can use the cardboard pieces, tighten it up. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and put this on. And again, this can't rub this either, so it's a fine line with that air gap. Okay, so I think I used the wrong bolt. If you look at this one has a large flange, and this one is not as big, but I think it's a little longer. So it's very important. They really made it a little tough on us. I think this one was over here. I made that mistake, so you definitely have to, this one's definitely different than that one. These ones are a little bit shorter because you can't have these going down into the fins. You gotta make sure you put the right ones where they belong. Easy to mix that up. Okay, so if you put this on wrong, it's gonna make noises. It's gonna probably make a screeching noise, and then you just have to readjust. Let's go ahead and see if this thing will fire up. All right, and I can see that I didn't quite have this. This actually wobbles a little bit, so I'm gonna fine tune that. We'll try starting it again just so you can see, maybe you can see it wobble. It's a little hard to see on camera, but I'm gonna fine tune that, but it's not rubbing here. Starts up, that's the first time this thing ran since the homeowner actually bought the house. And let me go ahead and show you the tools that were needed today. Okay, so here's the coil. This is the part number for that particular model, but like I said, just make sure you double check your coil. I always like to use the OEM parts. The gap installation tool. So feeler gauges is what most of you guys will be able to easily access. And once you find the right feeler gauge that works between 7 and 11 thousandths, then you can find maybe a piece of plastic. Whatever you guys have at home that you can use to gap it with. My clip tool that I use for everything, and getting that boot off without breaking off that metal tab. Those metal tabs can get rusted to the spark plug a lot of times, so this works great for a lot of different applications. 3/8 wrench I use with an extension. This is a 5/8 spark plug socket, and basically a spark plug socket has a rubber boot inside it that actually helps not lose the spark plug when you're pulling it out. You can use just a regular 5/8 socket. Inline tester, you can use whatever spark plug tester you have that will work for you. I'll put this in the link in the description below. 1/4 inch electric ratchet I always use, small extension, 2 8mm sockets. One was short for getting in that hard to reach spot. 1/2 inch was for getting the battery terminals on and off, which I used the wrench. The spark plug that came out was the correct spark plug. It was an RC12YC. That is the correct spark plug for the engine. And in my spark plug remover and installer, this works great. Like I said, you can just use a piece of fuel line to help you out. So that pretty much wraps it up for how to diagnose and repair a Kohler Command CV15 that cranks but it wouldn't start. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe, share my channel with your friends, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.